Earlier, with the help of a 100-ton hydraulic press, we tried to crush a broad-gauge railway rail. But as expected, 100 tons is not enough for this. Broad-gauge railway rails are too much for a 100-ton press. Even when cooled in liquid nitrogen, the rail still did not yield to the 100-ton load. And now, more than half a year later, this rail caught my eye. What load can this rail withstand in principle? Will our 500-ton press handle it? Let's find out now. But first, let's check how the 500-ton press deals with this small rail. This rail is not even from a narrow gauge, but most likely from some attraction or a cart. Let's try to crush this piece vertically.
The rail began to deform under a load of 100 tons.
Here's what a small piece of a small rail turned into after a 500-ton load. Let's see how the press handles a long piece of rail.
In this position, the rail also began to deform under a load of 100 tons. In slow motion, you can see how rust flies off it under load during deformation. By the way, if anyone knows, write in the comments what else such a narrow rail might be used for. And now let's return to a full-sized railway rail.
As it turned out, 500 tons is still not enough to crush this rail, although it did sustain very serious damage. But after all, it is quite a long half-meter piece. Let's try to shorten it by half and continue the experiment. the maximum load at the moment of rail destruction was 450 tons. This is practically the limit of this press's capabilities. A fragment of the rail hit the protective screen with great force, knocked it off its mount, and falling to the ground, severed the lighting wire running there. That's why the light went out at the end. And when the shear load increases to such enormous values, the frame of the press, despite being very massive, still slightly changes its shape. And when a sudden destruction of the object occurs, the frame, like a spring, returns to its original shape and the press slightly jumps. Here you can notice that the press is no longer in its place, it has shifted by about 5 centimeters. Here is what a damaged screen made of monolithic 3mm polycarbonate looks like. Even though it was torn from its mountings, it wasn't pierced by a fragment. I think being hit by such a fragment would be fatal. By the way, after the destruction, all these fragments were quite heated. For interest, I tried to weigh these fragments that flew into the protective screen. And its weight was more than 3 kilograms. Later, when I started cleaning the room, I noticed a crack in the floor that formed because the press jumped a little. I returned the press to its original place using 2 jacks, as there was no other way. It weighs almost 4 tons. Unfortunately, there was no camera filming everything in close-up, but from this angle, you can see how the press jumped. At first glance, this apparent shift in vibration of the camera are not related to the camera at all. It's actually the shift of the press.